Hi, friend. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Events Podcast. And in this week's episode, we are sitting down with guest Cassy Albert to dive all into what a graphics operator does at an event. And just a brief, I love her definition in here. But I will tell you a graphics operator is the person who is operating the slides or the PowerPoint, your static content at your event. They're often behind the curtain, behind the scenes. So you as an event host or an event planner might not even know that they're actually there and there's a human doing all of that. This is just an amazing interview with her where she takes you behind the scenes of exactly what she does, lessons learned, and how you as an event host or planner can help makes the whole slide process on site go that much smoother. So without further ado, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to the Better Events Podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events Podcast.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Events Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Logan Clements, and I'm joined this week by guest co-host Peggy Katz. And we have a third guest joining us today. So let's save as much time as we can for this lovely conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Peggy, to introduce our guest.
Cassy Albert is a presentation designer and graphics operator with over 20 years of experience creating visual content for corporate meetings, live events, and broadcast productions. She specializes in executive presentation development, event graphics, and on-site graphics operations supporting high-level corporate communications. Welcome, Cassy. Do you have anything else to add to that bio?
One thing, I am originally from South Africa, so I have a funny accent, and I apologize in advance for any words that I might say that might sound like I'm saying something else.
We love an accent, and yeah, I'm from Delaware County, Pennsylvania, and we say funny words, so we're accepting of all here. Thank you for being here, Cassy. Just to tell our listeners a bit about why we have you here. As a presentation designer and graphics operator, I feel like both Peggy and I get the privilege of getting to work with other folks who are in your role as a part of our larger productions. But I feel like some of our listeners who may maybe focus more on event management or the event planning side don't necessarily know who all the faces are behind the scenes on the production team. So I'm excited to highlight the work you're doing with being a graphics operator and controlling, all the things that happen on the screen from a PowerPoint presentation perspective, because we all know our slides are important and very crucial in many a show. So excited to kind of learn about your journey, some of your lessons learned, and hopefully listeners will come away with some insights into what it all means to be a graphics operator. So here on the pod, we like to start broad. So if someone is not familiar with what you do, can you explain what a graphics operator actually does during an event? And if you do some pre-work too, please insert that there. But what does a graphics op do?
Okay, so graphics operator, as you said, works with a audiovisual production crew on an event and is primarily responsible for the PowerPoint or the keynote slides or, whatever content is going up on screen. You don't have to be a content designer to be a graphics op. I have many colleagues who have made a career out of just being graphics op and they don't know how to design anything in PowerPoint. That's kind of where I came from. That's how I came into it. So I actually do both, which I find is very helpful on site, which for reasons I'll get into. But the graphics op typically is living backstage with the rest of the technical AV crew and works very closely with the teleprompter if there is one, the playback operator who's handling like the video or motion elements of the show, and is also working closely with someone like a content producer or content manager who's more of like the client-facing connection to the front of house people. So they're often running backstage with hard drives, giving you updated slides or like handwritten notes of changes that need to happen. That's kind of where you fit into the whole like puzzle of a giant team of production professionals. During a typical load-in day, the graphics op is responsible for setting up the graphics machines backstage. We usually have a primary and a backup if that should fail for whatever reason. We make sure that it's plugged into all the necessary outputs. that are going to various different departments. So we have like all kinds of HDMI cables going to the switcher for visual stuff. We have audio cables going to the audio guy. And we would just be testing that we're outputting the correct resolution to the screens, the correct color spaces, that we're getting a signal to the big screen, which is what the audience sees, and then the downstage monitor, which the presenter sees from the stage. And then testing audio, all that kind of stuff. Also, sometimes you have to install proprietary fonts that a corporate like package might give you with their template and make sure that those are all working. Most of the time we get the content by that day when we're loading in, and we can kind of click through and make sure that nothing looks wrong or broken. So then we are now ready to get into technical rehearsals with the rest of the production crew. And then our role is we're responsible for kind of going through the content that we have and seeing where our department might intersect with another department. So like if there's a lighting cue where there's like some kind of audience participation, like Q&A, like our show caller needs to make a note of where that is in the slides. The same with if there's like an embedded video or a sound effect that would affect like video department, audio department, sometimes lighting department. So we kind of just like go through a technical rehearsal and we go through all the content that I have and make notes of where that would involve multiple departments so that we're ready for the client rehearsals by the time they come in. And then we kind of do the same thing once the clients come in and they rehearse. We try and do it as close to what's going to be happening in the show so that from the presenter's perspective, they know what it is going to feel like with the lights on them and hearing their own voice in the room. And for my particular role, sometimes a show would be scripted. So either there's a teleprompter and the cues to advance the slides are written into the script, or they have a clicker on stage and they're clicking a little light backstage that tells me when to go forward. So we practice all of that with the speakers, and kind of we all get a feel for what that's going to feel like in the real show. And then sometimes we have a lot of stop and start where some of these presenters are seeing their content on this giant screen for the first time, and they're noticing things like, hey, that doesn't look right. That font is too small. That logo is too low, or whatever it is. And my responsibility would be to try and help them with as many of those changes in real time that we can do, or take notes to make those changes later on in the day. And then, hopefully we kind of rinse and repeat the same exact thing for the show, and it goes exactly as we rehearsed.
So for you, what's the difference between a smooth event and a stressful event?
I would say the smooth events are the ones where people are pretty buttoned up going into the show and there's not a ton of changes. I feel like when there's a lot of last minute changes, it definitely feels like a scramble. And I know sometimes the changes can happen really quickly. It's just a little typo or something. But sometimes the rehearsal can turn into like a working session where the speaker is now realizing for whatever reason, this just isn't landing the way they want it to. And they're kind of reworking the script. That's affecting like maybe slides that don't feel relevant anymore. We're cutting, we're adding new ones. It's starting to kind of turn into like, hey, we're going to be here all night. And then all the other departments are kind of sitting around waiting for that to happen, and it's burning hours. So, that can turn into very long days, not a lot of sleep, which adds to the stress. So I feel like the more buttoned up someone can be going into those rehearsals, the less stressful a show would be.
No, I feel like I'm like, oh, Cassy, I wish everyone listening could get you on their show, and like having a graphics op is so important because my like producer spiel is usually, when I'm working with the client is like, if it's an edit here or there, we're taking out a period, we're capitalizing a letter, our person backstage can totally make that change. But yeah, if it's like redoing whole new slides, layouts, graphics that look weird, or graphs that look weird on the big screen, it's like, I'd rather their design team, or if we have a presentation designer on site, actually make that, get it approved, and then just hand that part off.
For sure. I feel like being involved in some of the pre-production sometimes helps me put myself in a good position to have a stress-free show, because I can make sure that I feel comfortable going into the show, that I've done as much pre-pro as I can do. And I always tell people, don't cut corners on pre-pro hours, because otherwise you're going to pay double in overtime on site, because sometimes we have these really tight rehearsal blocks and there isn't a lot of work time in between. And so it has to kind of get saved till the end of the day when we've already worked a really long day. So yeah, like I definitely do what I can to help support the show, but sometimes it is really nice to have a second person there who's handling content changes while I'm tied into rehearsals and my machines are both busy outputting to the screens. I can't really be in work mode.
Yeah. And that's like a crucial one. I feel like sometimes when I'm making those budget decisions or arguments with a client ahead of time is like, why do you need that extra body? And it's if you have a tight rehearsal schedule, you're like, the operator needs to operate and control what's live on screen. And then the editor can be doing edits. And whether that's somebody, again, external brought in by the production team, or if that's someone on the client side, and I'm seeing this more as like budget shift, in the last couple of years where they will have an in-house creative team. And so it's like, you need to have your person there during that rehearsal to capture those notes and make those edits so that we can focus on the operating. And my biggest pet peeve, I have a couple clients who do this, is they love to send updated slides while you're in a rehearsal or something else.
Like the next my second thing was version control.
Yeah. Cassy, how do you feel about
I always tell people version numbers are free. Just keep renaming them. Don't give me a version that I already have and it's full of changes I don't have.
Yeah, I was about to say, how do you feel about file names being called final before rehearsals have even happened?
It's definitely a red flag that someone doesn't know what they're doing. Yeah, it's not final until it's happened already.
Exactly. I go, you can't say final until the event is done and I'm getting the files back from you. Then we call it final, not version 27.
Absolutely.
Oh, so yeah, we're kind of, I feel like hinting at it, but what are some common mistakes? Knowing a lot of our listeners here are event planners or even event hosts. So they're the end client. Like, what are some mistakes that they're making when they're preparing those speaker slides before they give them to you?
Yeah, that is an interesting one because I feel like PowerPoint and Keynote, but more so PowerPoint, it's a great tool for delivering a presentation. But when you're delivering a presentation in a boardroom or a classroom, it's very different than when you're delivering it at a huge, highly produced event like the ones we work on. You're demanding a lot more from the software. And there's certain things that you might need to make a quick change where you're not holding up other departments. And when you go into people's files and you see how they're built, sometimes it's not as quick as it should be because of the way they've built it. And that's not them doing anything wrong. They're doing it the exact way that PowerPoint was designed to do it. But if you're coming at it from a production point of view, like this needs to be made different for a production because I need to be able to get in there, make changes. So like a good example would be if someone's giving me a video file, like an animation, to embed in a Keynote, and then the client wants to slow it down or change a color, that's a super quick change if that animation is built in Keynote. I can make it in 10 seconds and then hit slideshow mode and it plays. If we have to now contact a motion graphics department to go into their After Effects files and change that and then re-render it, like we're waiting till the next day. So like building stuff for quick edits is something that I look for when I'm building a template or if someone gives me a template and I go into the slide master and I'm like, okay, we need to have all the layers of the slide master editable so that if we get in the room and there's sightline issues and things are getting cut off, I need to be able to like nudge those things up and they're not baked into like a JPEG and I need to now track down a Photoshop file. So yeah, those are some of the common things I see with corporate templates specifically is they're not doing it wrong. They're doing it exactly the way PowerPoint intended, but it's not built to optimize our job on site.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit about version control earlier. How do you feel is the best way to receive and organize slide decks across multiple speakers and multiple sessions for an event?
I really like using platforms like Dropbox or Box.com where there's like a project folder for, let's just say we've got like a main stage room and there's multiple breakout rooms. And so people can be invited to their respective folders. And, if you do need to access something, like sometimes a presenter will say, oh, I want to pull in a slide that I did in this breakout. You can go and find it. And you can search for it by like the name of the breakout. So like, it's really nice to have those online platforms where you have everything organized. So like, for example, if we were in our main stage and we have like day 1, day 2, day 3, all of the content that's coming in can be grouped in those folders. And then even further, you can have like session 1, session 2, session 3. So sometimes a presenter will just name their presentation sales kickoff final. And I'm like, I have no idea like who this presenter is, what their subject is, but because it's in the folder that's like day 1, session 2, it's like, I don't need to know. So I can really easily go in there and find it. And then if they have an update, I can also see a timestamp that like, hey, they've uploaded a new file since I downloaded this. Maybe they didn't version it up, but I know it's new because of the timestamp. So those online platforms are great, like Google Drive, Dropbox, Box.com. I'm a big fan of. Sometimes there isn't, great internet on site, and uploading and downloading is a problem. So once you kind of get to a point where the production crew has taken ownership of the files and there's like no more client uploads, it's often very helpful to have a content manager, a content producer that's handling that, like a traffic cop, and bringing you a hard drive backstage and just plug it in and go.
Oh, yes. I was about to say the shareable thing is great until we've like locked the deck, and then my graphics app will be like, Logan, there's a new version on there. Like they're going in and touching it right before.
Yeah. I mean, my least favorite is when people are working on a SharePoint document and then they get on stage and they're like, these aren't my slides. These aren't my notes, because they've been making all these changes in a collaborative online version of PowerPoint that more often than not, like us as a production crew, we don't have access to those internal SharePoints. And so we have to then do sort of like really quick work to find out like, oh my gosh, who has access? Who can download it? Who can bring it to me? So I think like that's another thing, is like working with a team that understands how it all works and they can explain to the stakeholders. Like sometimes there'll be a whole morning session and there's multiple stakeholders that are presenting within that segment, and we're rehearsing them not in order, like throughout the day. And so maybe all the content sits in one master document, but if you're making changes during the morning rehearsal and then someone's continuing to work online and then they come in the afternoon, like you need to make sure that you get those changes in there before.
Oh, I'm getting like full body shivers back to like version control of on-site things. Yeah, it's like an unsung hero, I feel like, at times. And that is one, I feel like, for any listeners, if you are managing the content and handing it to your production team, having clear deadlines of when, hey, we're taking this offline. And I know as a producer, I go, if again, changes happen, I get it. A speaker's on the plane, they all of a sudden realize they're talking tomorrow and they want to change things. But the big thing is like, you are slowing down that rehearsal time, which to your point, Cassy, of how tight some of those windows are. It's like, we then either have the choice, rehearse with the old deck just to get the speaker through their rehearsal time and then ingest the new one, or pause, do like you said, figure out how do we get it downloaded, uploaded, but then we're skipping all that quality control time that you mentioned that you do normally before it's speaker facing, because you wouldn't have gotten to look at it and seen those transitions. Now we're all looking at it together live.
Yes.
And that's just one I feel like I can't emphasize enough with any end client, that how important version control of locking it and then being like, the version we have here offline in the room, that is final. Like that's what we're working off of. If it's not captured in that, it's not going to be shown on stage. And I feel like you guys often have to deal with remembering those little notes of like slide 17, go back and we're going to update that one. And like, there's just so much detail to what you're doing, which feels simple, of like, you're just playing a PowerPoint. Yeah. But it's like more than that,
that's the easiest part of the job, dealing with like lots of different people and schedules and personalities. Like that's where like the nuances come in of like, just be patient, just be flexible. And like, even though we told them there's a deadline, like if they, blow the deadline, like that's okay too. Like everyone does this, it's not surprising.
So what I'm curious about is, from a show calling perspective, what makes communication between the graphics operator, the show caller, and the speaker really effective?
Yeah, I would say, I can hear the speaker backstage through the little monitors that I have, but they can't hear me. So if there's a stage manager, someone that's on headset that's standing close to the speaker while they're rehearsing, and can like communicate for me, like, oh, she's making that change right now. Because sometimes it's like they're dictating notes to me and I'm like, wait, I didn't get that. and that stage manager can say, okay, slow down. What did you say? So that's really helpful. You know, we also sometimes have clients coming backstage to just sit with us and work. And if there's time for that, like that's often like the most time efficient and you know, effective way as well. Sometimes there just isn't time for that. So having someone supporting my role, like a content manager, content producer who can be like also taking notes for me, that helps as well, because a lot of the times I am listening to the speaker, you know, they're reading their notes and I'm cueing the script like I'm taking the cues from their script. So I'm not able to listen to a lot of the headset chatter because I have to hit those cues. So yeah, it's also like really helpful to have some support in that way, especially during rehearsals.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I definitely made the mistake with it. Was it an offline rehearsal I did where we were in like a practice room essentially, that the speakers really didn't want to be mic'd up because they wanted it to feel casual, but then the rest of the team was sitting far enough away that at a normal talking volume, it was like, we can't hear anything. Like we kind of need to have a mic on to be able to hear, to capture some of those edits.
Yeah. And I think sometimes speakers don't understand that the rehearsal is just as much for us as it is for them. Like we need to practice like in and outs of getting people on and off the stage and how that affects lighting and audio. We need to get levels on their audio. I need to get a rough idea of like what talking points go with what slide. Like so often people get nervous. The rehearsals go perfect, but then they get up on stage and they're sitting in front of thousands of people and they get nervous. And I'll like be looking at the slides and I can see the preview slide in my downstage monitor, you know, presenter view. And I'm like, I think they're talking about the next slide, but they didn't click because they got nervous. And I'll like bring it up to the show caller. I'm like, I know this because we rehearsed, and every time we rehearsed, they were already on the next slide when they were talking about the specific thing. And so we'll make the decision to just go ahead. And then, you know, that they might not click for the rest of the presentation because they realize like, oh, they're there, everyone's backstage supporting me and they know my content, they know my script, and I'm too nervous to click. So they're just going to follow me. So that's why rehearsals are important.
Key takeaway from this episode: rehearsals are important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that is one. And I think about like some folks on this who are listening might not have the budget to have such a full scale production. But even just thinking some of the nuggets you said of like, I have a lot of my smaller clients are making their graphics and their like slides in Canva, which that's their DIY, able to do kind of really cool presentation design. But to your point, then what you talked about After Effects, having to call someone that it's like, but if it's made in Canva, you can't just edit it in, it's like JPEGs inside a PowerPoint. So it's like, okay, my takeaway for that person would be like, whoever made your Canva should probably sit in on the speaker rehearsal so they could make those edits and hand them off. But I hope also listeners are seeing the value of like, you're so specialized in this, Cassy, in a way that sometimes when you're using like an in-house AV vendor or something else, you're getting more of like a generalist of someone who knows generally things about AV, and they're not necessarily so in the weeds of like, I'm sure you know all the PowerPoint functions inside and out and shortcuts and all of that stuff that somebody else might know, but it just takes them longer. And so that's like the value of having a dedicated graphics operator who does this all the time on your show, to ensure, especially if I feel like I always emphasize if the content is a focus, like what's on the screens is very slide heavy, like you need somebody who knows what they're doing. And to your point, like you're very observant, you're listening, you're paying attention to rehearsals, you're not texting on your phone while the speaker's talking. Like this is your rehearsal time too.
Yeah, you definitely have to be vigilant, like listening and watching for cues of like, this person's nervous. You know, there's those signs where you know they're nervous, and then you have to like be there to like make them feel supported, make them feel like everyone backstage has my back and their sole purpose here is to make me look good on stage. And so that can like, you know, for example, if someone like misses a cue, it can throw them. They can be doing so well, and then all of a sudden it changes the whole cadence of their voice. They suddenly get super nervous. And if I can get them back on track, you can feel them like settle down and just like bring it home.
Oh yeah. No, oh my gosh. I love it so much because it's like really one team, one dream. And that is sometimes like I'll coach a client. I always check with the graphics operator first if they're comfortable, and our team backstage, like, could a speaker come and sit over your shoulder to like make their edits? But I also think it's nice because then it humanizes your role, because so many of you guys on the backstage are kind of hidden. And I love a speaker goes back that goes, whoa, there's so many people back here. And like
absolutely.
for the large productions there's 15 people behind this, these big screens that are helping you do it. And they can then see, okay, yeah, I have Cassy, they learn your name, and it's like they've got, we've got your back. We're all trying to make a smooth show is really what it is. And so whatever is needed for that. I'm curious on your take. Again, my larger productions, it's like a default. We never let the speaker drive, meaning when they click, as you mentioned, a cue light comes on for you backstage. It's pretty instantaneous. And then you're clicking versus their clicker is live. And that's smaller shows that when they don't have the, the ability to have an operator, they'll do that. What is your take on the pros and cons of each versus you driving versus have you been on shows in the last year or two where you've let client drive?
It's very rare that someone is very insistent that they want to drive the slides. And the reason why we like to take that control away from them, whether we explain it to them or not, sometimes they think they're actually clicking and we let them think that. But I can't tell you the amount of times that someone has got up there and they hit the button too hard and they double click. And I know, okay, they didn't mean to do that because we rehearsed and I know what's coming next. They're hitting the back button and I know they don't mean to go backwards. So I'm just going forward no matter what click I get. Sometimes they're clicking the laser pointer and I'm not getting any lights back there. So people get nervous and things happen, things get derailed. So yeah, I more so would be driving and watching for that cue light or listening to the little sound it makes to drive their slides. I've had like maybe one or two presenters who are like, listen, I have so many rapid clicks in my presentation. It's often like an external speaker who's doing a keynote and they have a lot of clicks and they're very tight and they know their content so well because they travel around the country doing this presentation over and over and over again. And they're just like, trust me, you're never going to be able to keep up with me. Just let me do it. I'm like, okay, fine. You're a pro.
If a planner could do one thing differently to improve how slides are handled on site, what would you recommend?
Ooh.
And this goes a little into version control of what we were saying.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely think having slides as close to final going into rehearsals is helpful. I think sometimes, like if someone's like building the content to get ready for onsite?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just make it like a smoother process.
Yeah, I think.
And I think maybe and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times, like you say, you're grabbing something from Dropbox, but when you're actually like running the show, you have that on your computer. It is not a link. It is not, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we always want to download whatever it is, Google Slides or SharePoint, whatever. We want to download that version so that, if someone is going into the online version making changes, even though they're not supposed to be, it's not going to do something funny on screen or crash the software. Also, sometimes like there's complex slide transitions or animations that are happening, and it always works better if it's like saved to the local drive of the computer. On that note, something that is another common mistake people make is sometimes I will have a presentation that I didn't build and I'm playing it in slideshow mode and it's getting really like hung up on a certain animation. There's like a lot of latency between when I clicked and when the slide actually advances. And I'll be like, what is going on? And I'll go and look and the file is like over 1 gigabyte, but it's like 20 slides. And I'll go in and I'll look, and a lot of the stock photography or images that they've used are like 4K. They're huge, print resolution, and they don't need to be. So that's something that can help a graphics op is if somebody checks for things like that, just like downscaling resolution of images and things going into the presentations, or if they're embedding video, make sure it's the correct codec so that's not going to crash our software. These are all things I can also do on site, but it definitely detracts from rehearsal time.
Yeah, I think you guys do, the great graphics operators always do this like cleanup that I feel like people don't realize how much is needed often, because like you're getting these different resolutions. I feel like my pro tip is always like, if you're going to embed a video, embed it, but like also give it to us separate so that we can make those adjustments if we need to.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
take it out of the PowerPoint completely. In our last week episode with Peggy and I were talking about scaling for different events, and Cassy, you might cringe at it, but I've had to be a graphics operator for some of my events where it's a very small show of like, I'm show calling it, but I'm graphics operating. And then I have one operator who's doing audio. And it is one that I've tried to make like small tweaks, and it's like, oh my gosh, I just forget that you guys are like wizards with PowerPoint, when it's like, I can make that edit. It's just going to take me a little longer.
Yeah. Sometimes when you're under the pump to make like a complex animation change, it's like so embarrassing for people to be seeing you stumble around trying to figure it out. You're like, I'll just do this later.
Yeah, or having to dictate notes and seeing you type them. Like, I feel like, everybody gets nervous of like someone looking over your shoulder as you're typing. Like, I promise I know how to type. It's just really.
Yes. Exactly.
Well, Cassy, we could keep talking to you for hours. I feel like hopefully our listeners have learned something new about graphics operating, but is there anything else that you'd like to add before we let you go? And then if you want to let our listeners know where they can find you.
Yeah, I get a lot of questions from people about like how AI is affecting our jobs. And it's super interesting, because I feel like clients have to be very good at articulating what they want to us so that we can like translate that into a graphic or a change. And so, yeah, with AI, you're only as good as your prompts. And so I do feel like sometimes having the person with the 20 years of experience who knows the industry, you can hear what the client's asking. You're like, I know what you're saying. Like, you're not using the right terminology, but I know what you want, and you can like make it happen for them. So I feel like that's one area where, AI really just can't fill the gap. But there are a lot of areas where AI has helped a lot. Like, I can't tell you how many times people give me headshots to put on title slides that are like terrible quality. The guy's face is cropped off in a weird way. And I can throw that photo into an AI chat GPT or whatever and be like, can you fix the lighting? Can you open up the crop on this guy's face? And I can actually apply like a standard style or lighting across a whole set of headshots so that they all look consistent. And that saves me so much time, especially when I'm on site. So like, there are a lot of good use cases for it, but like, I genuinely think we don't need to be worried about AI taking our jobs, so to speak.
Yeah, it sounds like you're utilizing it, and helping hopefully take off some of your plate, what you don't like doing. Like,
there can be a lot of like time saving tools that you can use. So I would encourage like any graphics ops or content designers to definitely explore what those are, because it can save you a lot of time on site. And like just a recent example was we made a slideshow of different event photos that people had taken at previous events. And the one photo, there was like terrible lighting and going across this woman's face, but everyone else's face was normal. And I didn't notice it. And someone out in the front of house saw it because it was huge. And they're like, oh my gosh, that looks terrible. Can you fix it? And I was able to do it in like 10 seconds. And they were like, oh my gosh, did you just Photoshop that? And I was like, no, I didn't have time for that. So yeah, it can save you a lot of time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love it. And I will say I have had to giggle a couple of shows I did last year, use some clearly AI created imaging for like crowd shots in their presentation. And it was like, you look at the content so much as the production team, you're really keeping it up there much longer than it would ever be for the actual audience. And so it was one of those, like, unless you knew what to look for, but it was like a crowd shot of doctors. And like after row 6, they didn't really have faces. And it was once you saw it, it was like, you can't unsee it. But they were like, it's only going to be up there for a couple. Like, so the slide would come up, and I, as a show call and headset, I was like, I know we don't like this slide. We're living in this slide.
Yeah.
And they move on. Like, they would go next. But it was what I was like, good enough. But if you look close enough, AI clearly has not figured it all out.
Yeah. And I think we're going to start to see like more and more of that. And people are going to be like, okay with it. Yeah, sure. I get the idea.
Yeah, they achieved the goal of getting the group shot. But
yes.
Cassy, thank you so much for being here. You want to plug your LinkedIn or anything for folks to get in contact?
Yeah, for sure. I have a LinkedIn. I think it's LinkedIn/Cassy Albert, just my name. And then if people want to reach out to me via email, it's cass@sistersagency.co. No M. That's it.
Amazing. Thanks so much for being here, Cassy. We really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And I have our bonus tip this week. So I usually do something completely unrelated, but we were talking about before we recorded. So this is relevant to what we talked about. Is I'm going to plug my bonus tip is if you are someone who has to deal with a lot of content, you got to get this SanDisk lovely hard drive. I am going to link it in the show notes. I actually got this because a graphics operator was using one on site and it was able to transfer huge files super fast. And my funny story was it took me a year, though, to then learn I was using the wrong little cable. It comes with a little cable. When I got it, I don't know what I did with the little cable. I moved it. And I was using a different cable and it was making the drive slower, which another graphics op pointed out to me. And so now I have the correct cable with the correct drive, and it just makes it, if you have lots of files, it goes so fast. So fast. So if you're trying to save time for your next event, I highly encourage you to purchase one. Even freelancers, having this in my pocket. This is what I use all the time. And you can see in the video, I've labeled it with my name so it doesn't walk away.
Good tip, Logan. That's a good pro tip. Better Events Podcast, you can find them at Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can email us at bettereventspod@gmail.com. You can connect with us on LinkedIn directly as well. Just let us know you heard about us from the podcast, and we'd love to hear from you. If you want to know more, if you want more Better Events content, join our private community on Substack. And thank you for listening. We'll be back in your feeds again next Wednesday. Thank you.